All right, so tonight is on social studies, as I was saying, core subjects, EC through 6 social studies. If you Google EPP passing rates, um, then we will look at the passing rates for core subjects. Usually I post the recordings on YouTube instead of emailing it out, so you'll be able to check it out on YouTube. Texas Teacher Today. So if we look at core subjects, the passing rate we always want to look at the 900 exams because that's the newer version. The 800 was the old version that they phased out a few years ago. So for ELAR, you can see the passing rate is 80%, pretty good. For math, it's a little lower, 77%. For science, 83%. Social studies is only 73%. 74%, sorry, 74%. And yeah, so you can see that social studies is consistently the hardest one for people. And that's what I hear people can always emailing me about is social studies and math, which lines up with the data, right? And this is the data from TEA, and it's for people taking their first attempt. So some people don't pass it on their second or third attempt either, right? So this is only first attempts. So even though the passing rate is high, if I would love to see what the overall passing rate is for the whole test. How many people pass all five at once? It's going to be a lot lower, right? Because a lot of people are failing at least one subject. So they don't release that data. But another thing I want to show you before we get started on the actual tutoring is if you Google Texas NASI Manual, this is the same website where you go to register for your test and where you'll get your scores when you get your scores. But click on Prepare and then scroll down and click on Core Subjects EC through 6, 391. Click on Go. And this will tell you a little bit about each test. It's a 5-hour test. You can see for social studies, you get 50 minutes and there's 40 questions, right? So it'll tell you the breakdown for all the subjects. You should expect to be there almost the whole 5 hours, if not the whole 5 hours. I was there almost the whole time. And then look at these sample questions because there's nothing closer to the real test than these questions, right? So I would highly recommend that because the questions were incredibly similar to the ones on my real test. So you want to do that. So tonight is free tutoring, and I usually have about 20-25 minutes because I have more tutoring after this. So we'll do competency 1 because it's pretty quick. And it's on social science instruction. So about teaching social studies. Competency 2 is on history. That one takes over an hour to do. Geography and culture takes a little while. Economics is not as long, and government and citizenship, it's a little bit. So we will do if you could mute your mic, somebody's not muted. I'm checking to see if I can mute. Looks like everybody's muted now. Thank you. So we'll do competency 1. All right. So we need to know the social studies content and performance standards. So it's good to look over the TEKS and not memorize them, but get a feel for what's taught at each grade level, right? So if you just Google TEKS, it'll come right up. Or if you have my course, it's hyperlinked in the course. But here's a little breakdown of basically the TEKS in a nutshell. There's no TEKS for pre-K. There's guidelines, right? But for K through 6, this is the gist of what they focus on for each grade level. For kindergarten, they focus on self, home, family, and the classroom, which makes sense because we know according to Piaget's stages of cognitive development that students in that stage are very egocentric, right? That means they can only think of things from their own perspective. So it wouldn't make sense to teach them world history or even US history when all they can really think about is their immediate world, right? So we focus on things that are relevant to them. Then in first grade, it gets a little bit broader. They're slowly starting to decenter, is what Piaget calls it. So now it's on the relationship to the classroom, school, community, and citizenship. So it's getting a little bit broader. And then in second grade, the focus is on their local community and accomplishments of important people. as well as the history of the community, state, and nation. So it's getting broader. Third grade, the focus is on how diverse individuals impacted their communities and the world. Fourth grade, the focus is on Texas history. Fifth grade, the focus is on U.S. history from 1565 until the present. And sixth grade, the focus is on studying people, places, and societies of the contemporary world. Okay, Karen, sure. Karen, I'll put my phone number in the chat box and you can message me because I don't want to read your chat in front of everybody. But you can text me and I'll get back to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So now everything we need to do needs to be vertically aligned. That means there's a connection between the lower grades and the higher grades, right? And luckily, the TEKS does that for us. There's a connection. And for example, in kindergarten, students begin to learn about Stephen F. Austin. They learn that he's the father of Texas, right? But in fourth grade, they learn about his life accomplishments, that he was an empresario, that he came to settle with the Anglo settlers in Texas, and that Mexico gave him permission to do that, invited him to do that, and his contributions to Texas independence, right? So it builds on what they learned previously. It's aligned. There's different strands of social studies. We know there's history, economics, government, citizenship, culture, science, technology, and society and social studies skills. Those are the different strands. One second. So history, of course, is studying events and people of the past. Economics is how countries produce goods, services, and create jobs and the value of money. Government, of course, is how we make and enforce laws, provide security, and the services we need to have a successful society. Citizenship means the traits of responsible members. Culture is the way of life. We know what science, technology is, and social studies skills is, including careful reading and metacognitive strategies. That's like thinking about your own thinking, self-evaluation. All right, so this is what I was referring to a little bit ago when I was talking about kindergarten, the stage of development they're in. We're going to learn all about, well, not all about, you could read whole books on this, but we're going to learn about what you need to know for the test about Piaget stages of cognitive development. So the first stage is sensory motor, and that's birth to 2 years old. And they learn from their senses and from movement. So that's why babies put everything in their mouth. That's how they're learning, right? They're slowly starting to understand object permanence, the idea that even if something's hidden, it still exists, which I think is why babies love peekaboo, right? Then the next stage is from 2 to 7 years old. So if you teach EC through 6 and you're in the lower grades, you'll have kids in this stage. They're very egocentric, that they only understand things from their own point of view. They think everybody has the same position as them. They're slowly starting to decenter, realize they're not the center of the universe. They believe in animism, symbolism, and moral realism. So animism is that everything has traits of living beings. So if they break a toy, they might think they hurt it. Symbolism, that something could be a symbol of something else. And moral realism, that everybody has the same moral code as them. And then stage 3 is the concrete operation stage, usually 7 to 11 years of age. And they're starting to think more rationally, but they need a concrete item to think about it, right? They need manipulatives in math. They're also starting to understand conservation. So I always remember the con in concrete and the con in conservation. So the conservation means that even though something looks different, it could be the same. So a tall, skinny glass of 8 ounces of water is the same as a short, wide cup with 8 ounces of water. And then the formal operation stage, usually 11 to 12 years, but they might not start it till they're 16 years. And this is where they no longer need that concrete item. They can think abstractly. And they can also engage in hypothetical deductive reasoning, where they can come up with a theory and the factors that could affect it and make a hypothesis. We want to teach them knowledge of and respect for self, family, and communities by modeling that and reading good literature about that, showing videos. Teach them how to share. Sometimes you might have enough supplies for everybody to have their own, but you might purposely make them share to learn how to take turns and share. You always want to have routines and procedures to make your classroom run smoothly. and teach them how to work cooperatively in groups by giving them lots of opportunities. And it's always good if you help them either pick or assign roles so they know what every person is doing. Instructional practices. So we want to keep in mind their developmental stage that we were talking about whenever we plan instruction. So we wouldn't plan anything for lower grades that has abstract thinking because they wouldn't be able to do that. So it needs to be appropriate. Always want to use technology in the classroom. I think your district will have resources that you're supposed to use. I know my school tells us what and provides resource and software that we can use. But if you need resources, like the Handbook of Texas is great to teach students about Texas history. It's got a lot of good stuff on there. All right. When we pick instructional strategies, we want to make it relevant to students. So if we're teaching them about economy and government, it's good to have a class store where they can buy and sell things from each other. For government, have role plays and learn what different people do, like police officers, firefighters, and other community members to protect society. There's a difference between primary sources and secondary sources. We want to teach students how to recognize both and use both when they're doing research. So a primary source is from an original source of information. And a secondary source is a document or source that relates information discussed elsewhere. And these are the different strands of social science, but we already talked about that. Anytime I repeat something, it's because they repeated in the chat. So a way you could integrate the different strands of social science is if you're teaching about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, you could read about slavery and the economy at the time. So that would integrate history, economics, and culture. You could learn about the arms she used at the Combahee Ferry, freeing 700 slaves. That would be technology of weapons at the time. And they can discuss how Harriet Tubman showed traits of good citizenship. Finally, they could use a graphic organizer to help them take notes and understand what they learned using social studies skills. So see how we coordinated, made it interdisciplinary. All right, so we can also make it interdisciplinary by connecting math, science, social studies, language arts. So a good example of this was when my daughter was in first grade, they did a unit on Johnny Appleseed. So the theme was Johnny Appleseed or apples. And in social studies, they read about Johnny Appleseed and watched a video. In language arts, they wrote a little reflection about what they learned. In art, they drew a picture. In science, they learned about the life cycle of an apple tree. And for math, it was really cool. She brought in parent volunteers and we brought in crock pots and we followed a recipe to make applesauce in a crock pot. And then they got to eat the applesauce. So they followed a recipe and learned about fractions as we were cutting the apples. So it was interdisciplinary, connecting different subjects. You want to use different assessments. So we know formal assessments are like for a grade, a quiz, a test, an essay, and it makes people nervous. So sometimes they don't do that well on it. An informal assessment might be like an exit ticket to show what you know. It doesn't make them as nervous and they might perform better on it. We always want to use differentiated instruction to meet the needs of all learners. Provide scaffolding, that's extra language support to help people reach the next level of proficiency. Very important for language learners to have scaffolding. And then differentiated instruction means that you plan and deliver instruction that meets the needs of all learners with different learning styles, interests, language, and cultural backgrounds and readiness levels. So we got to make it appropriate for the grade level. If you're teaching the upper grades, you can do current events and explain things about the world, but it wouldn't be appropriate to do that in lower grades, right? Not some of the current events, at least. And then we want to teach students how to read and interpret maps and also how to make their own maps. So especially like in kindergarten and first grade, I know my daughter had to draw a map of her house with a fire escape, right? And we had to do that together in practice. And then we always want to communicate with the community. So invite in parents, invite in community members to talk to your class about their careers, about their life, about their culture, their background. And then also, whenever we're teaching, we have to abide by FERPA privacy laws. So be careful to always observe that. So for example, if somebody calls and says that they're Johnny's mom, you need to make sure that they're Johnny's custodial parent that has a right to that information to their grades, right? Because they might not have a right to that just because they say they're somebody's mom. Um, so let's look at some questions. Feel free to put your answer in the chat box. Okay, so notice this one says select all that apply, right? So some of y'all said A and D, but it's actually A, C, and D, but let's just do A and D and then see how my course will tell you, right? 1 second, I'll do the next one. All right, let's do number 2. So this one, I'll pick A, but we'll look at it. This one's kind of tricky. There's a similar one to this in the preparation manual. And it says that it's not recess in particular, but it's an idea about something that should or shouldn't be. And it says that that's an abstract concept. Although I have to say, I have 3 kids, and I think that they could all have done that at that age. But on the test, we have to think like the test writers think, not the way we think. And they say that's an abstract concept. Um, So I'm seeing A and B, and it does say select all that apply. So that's correct. Um, so if you need help passing the course subjects, I have a course, well, you've seen my course, and I didn't show you, but it has a video at the beginning of each competency, right, where I go through it kind of like I did tonight. And then it's got all of the information you need to know for each competency, and then a full-length quiz for each competency, and then a final test. So basically, it's 2 full-length tests. Um, and in case you want to enroll, I'll put it in the chat box. And then I have something that is unique that most people don't have, and that's a course on test anxiety, right? So if you're having test anxiety, then you can you'll get that whenever you enroll too, and it will help you learn to overcome your test anxiety. It's all research based. Does anybody have any questions or comments? And I know sometimes we're too shy to ask in a chat, but you can text me privately at that number, and I can definitely answer any questions you have.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
I was wondering, so In your course, is it $39 per a month? And then if you want access to 3 months, it's $80. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's right. Yes. So
And
if you don't want a subscription, then the $80 would just be one time. It won't auto renew, but the monthly one will renew every month. You can cancel anytime though.
okay, and then when you sign up for the $80, then that day when you sign up is when it counts the 3 months, right?
Yes, it starts from today, so it would be, let me think, we're in July, it would be through October, whatever day in October, October
Okay,
15th.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you. I enjoyed it. I hope y'all have a great night. And I will post this recording on YouTube. If you go to Texas Teacher Today on YouTube, I have a bunch of other recordings too, so you can check them out. And sometimes I just make little 1 minute clips with a question, so you can check those out too. But thank you so much. I hope y'all have a great night. You know what will it help better than a book? There's lots of really good books out there, and I'm not so arrogant to think that my way is the only way, but a book wouldn't have videos and it wouldn't have self-checking quizzes. So I think there's pros and cons, but I have used books to pass some of my tests, and I've used courses for others. I prefer courses, uh, but I've definitely benefited from books too. So I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other, but if you're a more visual learner and you benefit from videos, then you would like that more. Or if you don't want to check the quiz yourself like you have to in a book, then you would like my course because it's self-checking. Um, but there's some good books out there. So there's not one way that only one way that works.
What's the difference between your Easy Tutoring and 240 tutoring apps?
Yeah.
What's the
Those
difference
are
between
different
yours?
companies. So Tutoring
Okay,
Easy, I'm friends with the owner, and that's a
okay,
program. I've looked at his stuff for special ed, and it's good. Um,
okay,
I think mine has a little bit more detail. That's what I think, at least. Mine has more detail. And then 240 has more detail than me. But
okay.
in my opinion, 240 will teach you everything you need to know, and then a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, that would be very overwhelming if you
Yeah,
have
it
so
is.
much
That's
to learn.
that's what a lot of people tell me. And but they both have good reviews. So if you are
Okay,
have it and like it, then that's great. But some people have said, well, those programs didn't work for them, and maybe mine doesn't work for somebody, and they go to the other company. I don't think there's one that works for every single person, but I have heard from several people that have tried other programs first, and then they've come to me and passed because mine is more concise than some of them, but it's got everything you need to know with all the extra stuff. That's what I think. At least that's my goal because I'm a busy mom. I don't have time for extra. Any,
yes, I
uh,
agree.
yeah, I have 3 kids and 2 jobs, so every minute of my day is busy, right, in a good way.
Yes.
And I don't have time to like. I think what 240 does, and I don't know for sure because I don't work for them, but I think they hire content experts that have a master's degree or a PhD in the field, which is really good, right?
Yes.
They might not have taken the test. And so they might
Mhm.
not know more detail about the actual test, but I've taken the test. I don't have a master's degree in all of the things that I write material for, but I've taken the test, and that's a big advantage.
Yeah, the experience. You have the
Yes.
experience.
Yeah, I know what the competencies are, and I write everything aligned to that. Um, But but any other questions or comments or anything?
Yes, I have one. So I took the test and um, basically I didn't even get done with it. I ran out of time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it, especially like math and social studies, I just kept overthinking and going back and is it this, and so I didn't even get to the other parts of the test. Um, so a lot of people ask me, do I have testing anxiety? I say, I don't know. I don't really don't. I mean, I've took tests before, um, but I don't think I did. But I think it's the principle of it. Like, I think I would gather more because I'm seeing it, I hear it, and I'm able to follow it versus me reading it in a book and I didn't get nothing from it.
Yeah, I think, and if timing is a factor for you, you can apply for alternative testing arrangements. Not everybody gets it, but if you have anxiety, ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, something like that, you can qualify possibly for extra time. So I put that in the chat box, um, in case you want to check into it and see if you could maybe get extra time on your test.
Okay, but is it possible not to get done with it?
Yeah, some people run out of time. That's why some people need extra time, time and a half on their test.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I hope you guys have a great night. If you have any other questions, feel free to text me. I might get back to you tomorrow because I have one more tutoring session tonight and then I put my kids to bed. So if I don't get back to you tonight, I will tomorrow. But thanks so much, and I hope y'all have a great night. If you want to call or text me, it's 361-846-0741. Thanks.